Back everyone to the Mastering VCF series by GoVMlab. Now, as you all know, in this series, our goal is not just to learn VMware products. Our goal is to understand how modern enterprise cloud infrastructure is actually designed inside real production environments. Now, in the previous episode, we discovered that VMware Cloud Foundation is not just a bundle of products. It is an enterprise grade cloud operating model. And now we are moving one more level deeper into the architecture itself. Because the moment infrastructure starts scaling, organizations face a very important challenge. The challenge organization faces about how do I control the environment? How do I secure this environment, right? So, how do I control it? How do I maintain security? How do I assure stability? And most importantly, operational consistency. Now, these are the bigger challenges for the organizations, for the enterprises, as when the infrastructure starts scaling. And these challenges gets multiply across multiple workloads and the multiple teams as well. And this is exactly where VCF domains come into the picture. So in this episode number 4 of Mastering VCF series, we are going to understand what these VCF domains are. We will understand why enterprises separate environments, what management domains actually do. We will understand what the role of the management domain, what workload domains are responsible for, and we will also understand how these management domain and your workload domain works together as a one single unified cloud platform. Before we start, a quick introduction about me, guys. I am Neeraj Mantri. I'm cloud security architect with 19 years of experience in virtualization, data centers, cloud, and security solutions. So now let's begin the next architectural layer of VMware Cloud Foundation in our episode number 4 of Mastering VCF series. But before we go deeper into VCF domains, let's quickly reconnect with what we discussed in our previous episode, episode number 3. Now, if you have watched our episode number 3, you would have noticed that we made one very important mindset shift. Most engineers initially think VCF is nothing. VCF is equal to vSphere plus NSX and plus vSAN. That's what majority of the engineers initially think about VCF as vSphere plus NSX plus vSAN, right? But then in the previous episode number 3, we discussed and we demystify this myth that it's not about VCF is not about individual products. And that's why we said VCF is not a bundle. VCF is an architecture, right? Because we discussed in the previous episode that enterprises are not buying products individually anymore. Enterprises are building today standardized cloud operating environments. And that's the reason, right? VCF is not just virtualization, right? That's what we have discussed, that VCF is not just virtualization, it is an cloud architecture, right? That's what we discussed in the episode number 3. So, guys, if you have not watched the previous episode of this series yet, we would highly recommend all of you watching the previous episode first before continuing with this episode for better understanding and better continuity of this particular series. So as you could see that we discussed about that VCF is not just about products anymore, right? VCF is an architecture. And we also learned that VCF provides unified cloud operations. VCF provides lifecycle management, operational consistency, automation, scalability, and most importantly, VCF gives you a one single unified cloud operating model. This is very important thing, guys. It gives you one single unified cloud operating model. But now here comes the next important question, right? If VCF is truly a cloud platform, then how does it internally organize infrastructure to keep operations scalable and stable? And that is where we need to understand. Okay, we understood what VCF is, but now we need to understand how does VCF organize infrastructure internally to keep the operation scalable and stable as well. And the answer of all of this is VCF domain. So before we go and move to the next slide, one of the things to highlight that we have moved from products to platform, from virtualization to enterprise cloud infrastructure, right? So let's understand the real enterprise problem that forced organization to design infrastructure this way. Now, this slide, if you really see, it says very clearly the enterprise problem. And what exactly is the enterprise problem? If you really see that, this particular slide on your screen represents what many traditional enterprise environment actually look like. If you really see that everything runs together, when we say everything runs together, which means your management systems, your production workloads, your monitoring tools, your backup services, your user workloads, and your network and security services. Everything runs together all inside one shared environment. Now, initially, this may look simple to you, but in real enterprise operation, it becomes extremely dangerous because when everything depends on the same environment, one issue starts impacting everything else. And that's the biggest challenge with the traditional infrastructure where it mixes everything together. And when everything runs together, your operation becomes very risky. What does that mean? Imagine a scenario: a monitoring service consumes excessive resources, and suddenly your production application slow down. Or maybe a backup process floods your storage traffic. And now your business application, your critical business applications become unstable. Imagine a patch applied to one infrastructure component accidentally impacts the entire environment. And this is exactly why we are saying your operations become risky when everything runs together on a mixed environment or shared environment. And that is the biggest difference between small virtualization environments and enterprise cloud architecture. Because real enterprises do not design infrastructure for convenience. Real enterprises design infrastructure for operational survival, right? And that's what this slide says, that mixing critical components in the same environment can create complexity, can create risk and operational chaos. And that is where enterprise needs structure, and that structure provided by VCF. Think about, I mean, you can think from another perspective. Think about a hospital. Now, in a hospital, would you really keep your emergency services, your pharmacy systems, your patient databases, your security monitoring subsystems, and public visitor Wi Fi? Would you keep all these monitoring security systems all running uncontrolled in a one shared environment? Would you be doing that? The answer is absolutely no, because the critical operations require separation and a structure. That's the two key thing. We really need to understand that critical operations always require separation and a control structure. And this is the reason exactly why enterprise intentionally separate their environment. And that takes us to the next slide, where if you could see that one of the biggest misconception engineers have is this. They think they think infrastructure separation. They think infrastructure separation increases complexity. And that's the reason they want to run everything in a one single shared environment. But in reality, you will see your separation creates control. Enterprises do not separate infrastructure to make it complex. They are not separating infrastructure to make it complex. They separate the infrastructure to make it more safe, more stable, and more scalable. That is the reason enterprise always separate. They always create separate infrastructure to create control. If you see isolation, what is the isolation means? Isolation means a problem inside one workload environment does not impact the another environment. That's the isolation enterprises needs today. The second, security. What does it mean by security? Security means critical systems remain protected through boundaries, through micro-segmentation, through segmentation or zero trust control. That's what the security means. The next, life cycle independence, which means one environment can be upgraded, one environment can be patched without affecting your business critical workloads. And that's what it says, that independent patching, upgrades, and changes without impacting your other environment. That is where the separation becomes very important. And the next is operational stability, which means failure are contained. Now, think about this very carefully, guys. If a Kubernetes environment needs upgrades, should my banking application go down? The answer is no. Why my banking application should go down if we are just upgrading our Kubernetes environment? Imagine if your AI workloads consume huge GPU resources, should your VDI platform becomes unstable? The answer is no. And that is the exact reason why enterprise always separate workloads. Separation is one of the key aspects of enterprise infrastructure designing. And that is the line I always want everyone to remember, that separation creates control, right? The separation creates control and gives you a more controlled infrastructure. So now the next question comes, how exactly does VMware Cloud Foundation organize this separation internally? Because here we understood that enterprise do not separate infrastructure to make it complex. We understood that enterprise create separate infrastructure to make it more safe, to make it more stable and scalable. But the next question comes, that how does VCF organize this separation internally? And that takes us to the next slide. So now, this is the big architecture movement of this particular episode, guys, where we are going to introduce something called domain-based architecture. This domain-based architecture is what where infrastructure starts looking like a true enterprise cloud platform. So VMware VCF introduced a domain-based architecture which brings control, security, and scalability to enterprise cloud operation. Right. So that is what the VCF domain does for us. This domain-based architecture help us where instead of keeping everything together, VCF organizes infrastructure into separate domains. Your one domain, what we call management domain, is responsible for running and managing the platform itself. So this management domain is responsible for running and managing the platform itself. Whereas we have a multiple other workload domain, as you could see that workload domain 1, workload domain 2, workload domain 3, and workload domain, many other workload domain. So we have multiple other workload domains which are responsible for running business workloads. And this kind of separation between management domain and workload domain creates a clear boundaries. It creates clear responsibilities, provides a much stronger operational control and predictable cloud operations. So now if you look at very carefully at this structure, you will see that at the top, we have this management domain. And below, we have this workload domain. And together, this management domain and workload domain, together, they form a one single unified cloud platform. Now, if you really think it from a real life analogy perspective, you can think about like a large airport. I mean, we are all have been familiar with the airport and its functions, right? So in airport, you would have seen there's a one centralized control system, like control tower, which is managing the airport itself, all the functions of airport. But then there are thousands of passengers operate independently across those various terminals. And that separation is intentionally designed for the seamless function of airport. And VCF follows the exact same operational consistency. So your VCF gives you one environment to manage the platform and many environment to run the businesses, which means one environment, which is our management domain for the managing the platform, whereas many workload domain to run the business. And that kind of architecture gives us a clear boundaries, clear demarcation, clear separation of defined responsibilities and stronger control. And that's what it says, that VCF organizes your infrastructure into domains. So now let's first go inside the most important domain in this entire VCF platform. And what is that domain? This is our management domain. And this domain is extremely important, guys, because this domain runs the platform itself. And that's the reason we call it as a platform control plane, because this domain is runs the platform itself. It is not running your business application. It is not running your user workloads. It runs the platform itself. And the platform, what you see that inside this domain, right? Inside this management domain, you could see that we have core infrastructure services. So inside this management domain, you could see that we have a core infrastructure services like vCenter server, like SDDC manager, NSX manager. We do have infrastructure automation services, monitoring services, lifecycle management, identity and access management, certificate management, and many other operational services. What do we see inside this management domain? So this management domain runs and manage the VCF platform and enables all your workload domains underneath it. So as you could see that this management domain is essentially the control plane of the entire VCF environment, and it manages and enables every workload domain underneath it. So here is the key understanding. What you really need to see is that business application may run elsewhere, but the platform intelligence, when we talk about platform intelligence, the platform intelligence lives in this management domain. So it's a centralized control plane for your infrastructure and for your operations. Management domain hosts core platform services, automation, and monitoring. And this is the thing I want you to take it from this particular slide, is that your management domain is the one which runs the platform itself. No workloads can run anywhere, but the platform intelligence lives here, and that is what the management domain runs. It's something like, if I have to give you some real life analogy as well, you can think about electricity in a smart city, right? Or in any of the city. Now, as a citizen, I always focus on get my work done. And to get my work done, I always need electricity, right? So once there is electricity at my house, I can get my work done. But how the electricity is getting produced, the power grid, traffic systems, security monitoring of those power grids, and handling the entire operations of electricity supply across the city has to be controlled centrally, right? And that, as a citizen, right, that's not something we get. I mean, we are responsible for that, right? So that centralized intelligence is exactly what the management domain represents, right? So now the architecture becomes much easier to understand for us. But let's go and try to have another real life example to relate management domain, or to understand management domain little more better. So this analogy, if you really see that the airport example, what we have taken earlier as well, you know, if you could see, this management domain is like the control tower of your airport. Now think about what control tower actually does, right? The control tower does not fly plane by itself, but without control tower, the entire airport operation become a chaos. And I hope we all will agree with that. This control tower monitors everything. This control tower coordinates every traffic. and ensure everything runs smoothly. This control tower maintains operational safety. It makes sure that there is no flight collision is happening. It maintains that operational safety and the right movement of the flight so that your pilot can focus on flying rather than focusing on this operations, because that's the job of the tower. So you could see that the tower job is to focus on operations, airport operations, coordinating the traffic, you know, maintaining your operational safety, whereas the pilot job is focused on flying for the seamless onboarding of the passengers, right? And that's what your management domain does it. The management domain, if you see, does not run business workloads directly like your control tower, but the management domain controls, monitors, automates, and orchestrates the entire cloud platform so that your pilot can focus on flying airplanes and the control tower focus on operations. And exactly the same way as we were discussing, management domain can focus on platform related operations. So your management domain can focus on platform related operations, where your workload domain can focus on running business applications. That's that's what about your management domain. So now if you start to think about infrastructure like an architect, so now if you start thinking like about infrastructure like architect instead of just an administrator, I would say you're already moving in the right direction, right? So now we talked about the management domain. Now that we understood who control the platform, we understood that what the management domain is doing for us. It is running the platform itself, right? We understood who is owning the platform, but naturally the next question comes up. Then what is this workload domain, right? What the workload domain is responsible for us, and that take us to the next slide. But before we go to the next slide, guys, if you are enjoying this VCF journey so far with GoVMlab, then we would request you please like, share, and subscribe to GoVMlab, because this series is designed differently and we are not just learning the features, we are understanding how real enterprise cloud infrastructure is designed, operated, secured, and scaled. So, over the next episodes, we are going to deeper into vSphere, vSAN, NSX, lifecycle automation, and real world operational thinking. So we need your support. So please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please share it with your friends and colleagues as well, and continue this VCF journey with us, because at GoVMlab, we don't teach tool, we teach architecture. So now we understood that who controls the platform, and the next question is that who actually runs the business workloads. So now, as you could see that the workload domain. Now this is where the workload domain comes in. This is where your actual businesses run. Your production applications, as you could see that, your production applications, your Kubernetes platforms, VDI environment, databases, and AI workloads. All these workloads run inside your workload domain. And here is the important difference. If you observe, the management domain is running the platform, but your workload domain is running the actual business applications. And the good thing is that if you observe, enterprises can create multiple workload domains based on the business requirement. For example, for example, one workload domain enterprises can create for running their banking applications. One workload domain they might create for their AI research or AI ML based workloads. Another workload domain may be running their VDI environment. And the good thing is that each workload domain, each environment remain isolated, secure, and independently scalable from the other domain. That's the kind of isolation, security, and independence VMware provides you with workload domains, right? So now this workload domain runs the business for us. This workload domain runs your production applications, your business application. And that's what it says, that workload domain is where business applications run. Workload domain hosts the actual business application production workloads which are running inside the VCF platform. It runs your production business, applications, services. It provides isolated environment for running your different workloads, such as Kubernetes, VDI, and most importantly, it also provides you scalability, security, and operational separation. So now let's have a real-time analogy of workload domain. How do we see the workload domain in the real world? Now imagine this as a modern smart city where you could see that each district has a dedicated purpose in that particular city. You could have a financial district for your banking and ERP specific applications. You could have a technology district for running your Kubernetes, and maybe you're running your AI ML or cloud native workloads. You could have a healthcare district specifically for database and critical applications. You could have your AI research district as well for your research based workloads, or you could have a corporate district maybe for your VDI or enterprise desktop. Now, as you could see that within a one city, we have a different districts, and each districts have a different purpose from the business use cases perspective. And the thing is that each district operates independently. Each district operates independently. All remain connected. All remain connected to the one centralized infrastructure platform. This is exactly how enterprise cloud environments are designed. So as you could see that you have a one centralized VCF platform, a one centralized infrastructure platform, but your each environment is operating independently but connected to this centralized platform. You could also consider this as your airport. So this could be your control tower, and then these could be your dedicated terminals where passengers are onboarding the flights, right? So this is exactly how enterprise cloud environment are designed. Different workloads have different performance requirements. Different workloads can have a different security requirements, different scaling requirements, and different lifecycle requirements. And workload domain makes that possible. And that's the whole use cases of the workload domain, where it's a one cloud platform, but provide you multiple business environments based on the requirement. Just like a modern city separates your business zones for stability, for scalability, and security. So now let's combine everything together and understand how this entire operating model actually works. So how everything works together, and this is what this slide represents, the enterprise cloud operating model of VCF. And as you could see that at the center, we have a management domain. The domain which provides automation, the domain which provides lifecycle management, monitoring, security policies, and operations management. And it provides all these capabilities across all these workload domains. What do we see that? And below, we have a multiple workload domain, as you could see that workload domain for production applications, workload domain for Kubernetes platform, databases, VDI, and AIML workloads. So multiple workload domain operate independently. So now this is the beauty of VCF architecture, which we are talking about it, separation to create control architecture, where we have a one centralized control plane, but then we have a multiple isolated workload environment, a unified infrastructure services with consistent cloud operation. And this is what enterprises actually want. Enterprises today do not want just virtualization for creating VMs. Today, enterprises want operational consistency at scale, right? Imagine you are the in charge of the environment where you are managing hundreds of environments manually. Every patch, you have to manage it manually. Every upgrade, you have to manage it manually. Imagine this kind of chaos. Every security configuration, every monitoring task have to done separately. And that is where it becomes operational chaos. But with VMware Cloud Foundation, it solves it through one centralized architecture, a unified cloud operating model. So now we are ready. So we understood what is this VCF domain. We understood that we have a one control plane, which is our management domain, and then we have a multiple workload environment to run the actual business applications. This is the time for us to now and go a little bit more deeper into the compute engine power of all of this. So guys, in the next episode, we will go inside vSphere product itself because vSphere is the compute foundation of VCF. Because vSphere now is not just a hypervisor anymore. vSphere product is the compute foundation of VMware Cloud Foundation. And the next episode of VCF series, we will understand ESXi architecture, virtual machines, hypervisor, compute abstraction, and clustering orchestration. And we'll see that how VMware converts physical servers into a scalable, a cloud architecture. And believe me, this is where the actual cloud engine starts, right? And that is what we're going to discuss in the next slide. So before we go and close this episode, guys, let's have a quick summary of what we have learned today. So in this episode, we understood why enterprises separate infrastructure environments. We understood why separation creates operational control. In this episode, we understood what is VCF domains, what is management domain, what is workload domain, and what are their responsibilities and functions. And we also understand that how VMware Cloud Foundation create a one unified cloud operating model. And this is exactly, I want to repeat it once again, that VCF is not a bundle of products. VCF is an architecture, right? So in the next lecture, we are going to understand the foundational layer of VCF, and that is our vSphere, which provides compute virtualization, right? So that is the reason we say that it is a compute foundation of our entire VCF stack. So thank you everyone for joining this session, and I'll see you guys in the next episode number 5 of Mastering VCF series. Please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and keep supporting us. Thank you once again, guys. See you in the next episode of Mastering VCF series.